Okay, we should be set.
Thank you, Summer, so much for helping us get settled here. We just came out of our closed session and we are resuming now. Today is August 25th, 2020 for a regular city council meeting here, 7:08 p.m. Consistent with the provisions of the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act, we are meeting electronically. Governor Gary Herbert did amend the way in which we can meet and requested that if we'd like to continue to meet electronically, that I, as chair, submit a letter of determination, which I did submit and read to the council prior to our meeting earlier today. And so we are set for 30 days to meet electronically per Utah Code and the Open and Public Meetings Act. And the Governor Gary Herbert's decision. Okay, so we are moving forward here. Item 1.1, call to order and roll call attendance. Summer, can you please take us through roll call?
Yep, we have Mayor Emily Niehaus, Ronnie Duressery, Moab City Council, Tony Knutson Boyd, Moab City Council, Karen Guzman Newton, Moab City Council, Kaylin Jones, Moab City Council, Carly Castle, Assistant City Manager, Joel Linares, City Manager, Lori Simonson, City Attorney, and Mike Duncan, Moab City Council.
Thank you so much. Item 2, the coronavirus updates. I do not have any guests joining us this evening. I do want to report that before our last meeting, our special meeting, and after our last meeting, I did reach out and communicate with the Grand County Council Chair, Mary McGann. She was informed of the meeting and she was informed of the topics that we were going to discuss. And then I followed up with her after to report what had been discussed. I know that there was confusion and that maybe some other members, staff members of the council of Grand County were curious about why they weren't reached out. Mary didn't suggest that I should do that, so I didn't. So I just wanted to report that as the mask order from them did extend it through December 31st of this year. So other than that, I don't know that we have any updates unless any of you all have something to share COVID related, update related. Ronnie?
I was just going to suggest if people hadn't listened to the county council meeting, their last one, Braden was on there and he had a lot of good updates that I thought were just good for all of us to know about, both in terms of the health department getting a few quick testing machines. And then if you guys haven't gone to the coronavirus.
Oh. I think she was about to say go to the coronavirus website.
Yeah.
To do that. Tani.
Well, Ronnie gets back on track. Also, in last week,
August 31st.
You kind of froze.
Am I back?
You're back. You were saying the website.
Okay. I thought I saw a tail passing in the distance. I blame the tail. Okay. Anyway, no, I just was saying if people hadn't listened to the Grand County, their last meeting, Braden was on there from the health department and there were just some good updates. So I just recommend people listen to that. There's some interesting stuff about them getting quick testing machines, doing another testing day with the National Guard on August 31st. I think it'll be at the high school. And while they're trying to focus on school district employees, it'll be open to anyone. And it is my understanding you don't have to have symptoms. I mean, they're trying to be open. So there were just a bunch of, I thought, good things in there, I thought. Yeah.
And just to let you know, the invitation was given to the health department for, I think, the past 3 meetings. I've, reached out and invited the health department and hospital to come and speak, but they said, we've got nothing all that new to share. So
And I'm just going to thank you guys and the residents who asked for more data, because it does look like also they've got more data up now on the health department site, which is cool for all of us. Just, yeah, we know more.
And Tani?
And I was just in the middle of saying, in addition to listening to the county, last week in the newspaper, there was a whole entire page of questions and answers from the health department that was pretty comprehensive, and it was pretty easy to understand.
Yep. Mike?
Yeah, one other thing, some friends and I were going round and round noting that the huge number of cases in the 25 to 44 age category, and the speculation was that those folks aren't as careful as us older folks are because not as likely to die. So the only thing new I've added to the party is I did look up for the US, for example, how many people are in that age category versus the others. And it turns out that in 25 to 44, there's about roughly 10 times as many, I'm sorry, 3 times as many people as there is in the 65 to 84 age category, where there are many, but there's 10 times as many cases. In other words, on very roughly speaking, it would appear that the younger age group, in fact, are 3 times more careless, if you will. And so that was kind of an interesting stat, just a very crude one, but it's kind of helps explain that giant peak in the middle. I mean, there's more people in that age category, but not enough to compensate for the number of cases that they have.
They're also the ones that are working in the service industries, and probably have more contact with more people than
That's a really good point.
65 to 85-year-olds.
Karen?
I don't know if it's possible that just it is COVID related, and most people didn't get to hear what you were saying about the fact that why we're meeting through Zoom, and the fact that we are a gathering and the populace who comes typically to our meetings are 50 plus and they're more at risk. There was some information that was that passed through council, and I just want to make it very clear that I'm not meeting in person waiting for a vaccine. And it seemed like that was a piece of information that went out to a constituent, and I don't know if that is the rest of the sentiment from the rest of the council, but that is definitely not why I'm meeting via Zoom.
So we're actually it's on our agenda to actually talk about electronic meetings. So let's just say that again when we get there, and I appreciate that. It'll be good for us all to have the conversation about that. So
okay. Sorry, I didn't realize where it was coming in. Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right, moving right along to approval of.
We did, and also COVID related, we did get the electric signs up on each end of town.
Oh yeah.
And we're working on the banners.
Yes, thank you so much, you and staff. I should have started off with that. Thank you so much, Joel. Thanks for bringing that up, and thanks to staff for doing that.
The placement is great. It's super visible. I think it's a perfect place, both directions.
I've only seen one of them so far.
South side.
In case people haven't seen them, can you just tell people where they are?
So
Yeah.
right before Mill Creek Drive, like where Aggie Boulevard kind of goes to the left. So it's on the east side, if you're heading north, and then if you are out by 313, I saw that at nighttime driving in, it was very bright and visible, and so yes.
Yeah, the one south of town on the northbound lane is like right on a hill. So as you're coming up to it, it's like all you can see, like kind of drops off behind it, and then you drop over the hill and see town. So it's pretty prominent.
Good placement. Thanks, staff. Okay, approval of the minutes. We have minutes from our August 11th meeting and our August 19th meeting. Is there a motion?
I so move to approve the minutes for August 11th and August 19th.
Thank you. Karen, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Tawny, discussion?
I just had two things I sent to Summer. Thanks for taking care of those, Summer.
Thanks so
You're
much.
welcome.
And I will roll call this vote. Tawny,
Aye.
Ronnie,
Aye.
Kaylin,
Aye.
Karen,
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Minutes approved. We're now on to the mayor and council reports. And I shall kick us off here. I wanted to report that this coming September 1st, I will be hosting the first of probably what's going to be at least 3 focus groups on our, what I'm calling our Urban Mill Creek corridor. Tawny and Mike have both raised their hands and are willing to participate, which I very much appreciate. I suspect that during the second and third focus group, we could get other council members to attend as well. So you are not off the hook in participating if you didn't raise your hands first. But basically, as I've sent the series of questions to all of you, again, if you've got an additional question that you'd like for me to ask, I'm happy to do so. The point of the focus group is to collect data, information from our community about what we see and our experiences on along Mill Creek, from the diversion dam to the Colorado River, so that we can collate the data for future projects and policies. Yes, Mike?
Yeah, Emily, I texted you, but did you want to include as a part of that discussion the concept of in-stream flow? Because particularly since
yeah. Absolutely, which is what makes you a very valuable member. And actually more on that soon. But yeah, that is definitely going to be, as you can see on my questions, one of the elements.
Yeah, well, Carly was gracious enough we've already given her an introduction, the Moab Irrigation Company folks heads up there, but they'll be happy to do that again. Okay. So.
Awesome. What else? Yeah, so we're going to be asking the same questions in each focus group. So if somebody doesn't make the first, it'll be fine. We'll still be able to get their information. And I wanted to let you all know too that because I know we were all so affected by the public response to the Bike Skills Park and the sentiment, I have been reaching out to individual members to sit down and really listen to how people are feeling and really trying to get some more historical context of how the parkway came about and the intention 20 years ago when it was just 20 plus years ago when it was just in the thinking stages. So that we can do a better job as we are moving this ball down the field, this political ball. So that's that. Also, I emailed you all the Governor's Office of Economic Development update. So I'm not going to bore you with reading it. And I also CC'd the papers. So hopefully they will be publishing as well, that the legislature last week made some decisions to pretty much provide communities like Moab with more COVID relief. And while applications, they're not yet opening applications because of, kind of restructuring and getting ready to open what they call the next tranche. They will be available soon, and hopefully all businesses in Moab that haven't yet or have only gotten some money will be able to get more money, more relief. More on that when Clint gives his presentation later. Also, I missed our Governor's Rural Partnership Board meeting, but because I was on family vacation. But I did want to share that our Lieutenant Governor Cox did read a statement that I'd made about affordable housing, but Council Member Curtis Wells from the county did lead out on the subject of affordable housing. So we are going to hopefully inform some legislation in this next coming session about affordable housing. What else? The League of Cities and Towns, I attended the board meeting, and LPC, and all of that's really wrapped up in the updates of, you know, what happened at the legislature, which was essentially more money allocated for businesses. Attended the Market on Center. I want to give a special shout out, thank you to Teresa King for being this council's advocate for providing the community information about Proposition 8. And I really encourage us all to open our ears and listen to what our community is saying about that, that which is going to be levied on the November, during the November election. And then also shout out to Karen for womanning and helping out at the census booth, which I'm sure you're going to report on, but it was just very cool to see, you know, council at work. And so many people enjoying the Market on Center. I did participate in a water banking call, Mike, with the Department of Water Quality and our water lawyer and the Nature Conservancy to just get more information about the legislation that passed and what, if anything, the city might be able to do to look at creating a water bank. And so maybe more on that, and maybe with all things, you and I could, Mike, you and I could potentially meet, and I could get you up to speed, and you could get me up to speed on all things water, Moab Irrigation Company in particular. I had a double hitter with John Curtis today. I attended his town hall meeting that just happened before our meeting, and then also he did a panel discussion with the Office of Outdoor Recreation, which is hosting their Outdoor Recreation Summit in the next couple of days, which COVID, all things considered, I'll not be attending. So it was really nice to see John Curtis and continue to feel supported by him and him being present. And that's all for me. Ronnie?
All I had was a EMS meeting on, I think the 17th, if I remember properly. So I'm just scrolling here. Yes, the 17th, to just pick out some of the points I know you guys are interested in. One of the interesting things about this meeting is the medical director, the doctor who is involved to advise EMS locally, Dr. Murdoch, who is a trauma 2 doctor up north and has been involved since 2013. I think he's been involved with EMS. I wrote down, it's a little hard to read, so it was either 1985 or 1995, but he was on our call this time just because we have some newer board members and some people had questions. But just some interesting things that come out of that in case people don't know is it's kind of interesting that a lot of things that are written for EMS are produced more for metropolitan EMS services as opposed to rural. So we had some interesting discussions about some of the things available and that have developed over time that are more useful for rural EMS. For example, some of the protocols that get written might not have your EMS providers do certain things because the travel time is so short to go from an incident, say, to a hospital. But it was interesting to discuss why and how rural EMS then sometimes actually can provide certain procedures and certain medications that you wouldn't see them doing in an urban environment. So pretty interesting stuff. I guess one of the takeaways from that is that apparently our EMS is really looked to statewide. People really admire it and want to come work in it because you do get to do some interesting things. But also he was saying, I mean, we should just know that we have a very amazing agency here that's recognized across the state, and others in the state could do it too, but they just haven't put the effort and kind of the staff commitment to taking it to the next level the way it's happened here. So I thought that's kind of all good to know as someone who has perspective from around the state and certainly a more urban environment. So our July calls with EMS were 152 compared to 136 last year. And overall, so far in 2020 compared to 2019, we're at 97% of where we were last year so far in the year. Just some other interesting things that I didn't know that came up this time is the department in Grand County has a contractual agreement with State of Utah Forestry, Fire, and State Lands to provide medical support on wildland fires. And I'm sure a lot of us have been thinking about that sort of thing lately. And what is interesting is, as you know, departments struggle with finances. This is not only an important service EMS can provide to wildland firefighters, but it is a way departments, if they have the manpower, can make some extra funds. So in the past, our EMS has had a hard time doing this, but this year we're well staffed and have been able to staff fires recently, and are hoping to do more of such, fires locally and regionally, allowing for that. So just to give you guys some ideas, they had a crew out for 9 days. The district billed just over $20,000, and after paying all the staff costs and everything, if I understood properly, the district will make about $10,000. And let's see, in terms of the new building they're building, they were still waiting on the 17th for the final electrical plans from the engineers, but the hope was they'd be able to submit that soon to the city for approval. So staff may know better than I if they've been able to come in and do that yet. And they were hoping that by the end of August, they would be outside of the administrative offices. And I think they were hoping to demolish, in September. And then like everybody else, we're struggling with budget, but cutting where we can and looking at what we're probably gonna have to take from our fund balance. So latest numbers are, we have come up with $127,000 in reductions in expenses, and are currently looking at a hit of $111,000 to our fund balance. And this is also the time of year when the EMS Special Service District and the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District, which Tawny serves on, they come together and discuss and come in front of the county council to say what percentage of the sales tax that both entities share they're looking to get. So those discussions are going on, and that will probably be discussed in front of the county council first meeting in September. I think that was it for me.
Thank you, Ronnie. Mike, you're up.
It's all water stuff, county stuff. The idea is to fill Ken's Lake every year, every winter, and run off that all summer. And in a drought year like we've had this year, there's not enough water in the lake to do it, and they're getting very near the minimum 400 acre foot level. So in order to keep farmers with enough water to close out the irrigation the summer season, they've turned on 2 wells that pump groundwater. It's an expensive proposition to pump, and actually the Moab Irrigation Company is doing the same thing for their users. We've been running now 2 pumps since midsummer, which is pretty early. All right, this has been a pretty dry year. And at a meeting last week, the Graham County is considering purchasing some water rights from a private user out there that have not been in use. And it's interesting because water rights at all these many years have been given away for free, so to speak, by the state. All of a sudden, if somebody else wants to buy them, all of a sudden there's a substantial market for it. Water is not going to be cheap, no matter who purchases it, particularly if you're a public entity and so forth. So look for your water rates to go up in the long run down there. And more importantly, I keep trying to convince Dana Van Horn and other players that there's not an infinite supply of water out there. For example, this well that and the water rights associated with it that the county is considering purchasing. Back in the 1960s, it pumped water very nicely, but there was relatively little demand on the groundwater at that time. Things have changed, kids, and the climate's drying up. Hotter weather is certainly coming, and we're in the middle of a long drought. And so it's clear to me that the problem for cities and counties that we have to make will serve commitments years in advance, decades in advance. And meanwhile, the State Division of Water Rights is reluctant to pull the plug, so to speak, on new apps and so forth, because they don't want to hurt anybody, all right? But it's a conflict. In other words, if we just keep blithely assuming that there's water out there forever and ever, somebody's going to get hit sooner or later, all right? Because there's not an infinite supply of water out there. Ken Colm, who's the consultant that the city has hired, has turned in a phase 4 as a water budget for the entire area, including not only the Glen Canyon aquifer, but the Valley Fill aquifer as well. And I'm busy slogging my way through that report. If you love to read long, very dense technical reports, then hydrology is your man, is all I can tell you. So, but more on that later on when I finish digesting that. But a lot of water stuff going on, but that's the takeaway from it, guys, is that obviously we're in another drought year, and water will continue to be an issue. That's it, kids.
Thank you so much, Mike. Next up is Tawny.
The museum did not meet last week. We moved our meeting to tomorrow night, so I don't have anything to report on that. HASU has the senior housing project is 2/3 full, and they are filling up pretty fast. Wingate Village, which is out in the valley, is moving right along. They have 11 mutual self-help homes, single-family homes, and 22 affordable 3 and 4 bedroom townhomes that are going in out there. They've also secured 19 lots at Arroyo Crossing and hope next year to be able to do an apartment building at Arroyo Crossing. They are in just discussions with the city and the county about deed restrictions and how those will be administered. Ronnie mentioned that the Canyonlands Healthcare Special Service District and EMS are meeting, and yes, they are meeting and trying to iron out the percentages of sales tax. And that's a tough one because you really can't say we need one more than the other. They're difficult discussions. So I'm grateful I don't have to participate in those discussions. And I do believe that is it.
Thank you, Tawny. And Karen. You are muted.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a shout out to Mike. I've been doing my own, just because we're in heat wave and we're in a drought and we are surrounded by fires, doing some research about water issues in general. And it's really awesome that we have such a dedicated group of folks in our community, because the word on the street around the world is water is not finite. And we really do owe it to the next generations to be cognizant of what we're doing. So Mike Ewell, thank you. But anyway, I had a town hall meeting with Senator Romney and Vicky Varela. The topic was tourism and outdoor recreation. He gave a brief synopsis of what was happening in DC with the next stimulus plan. He definitely wasn't trying to tell people that it was going to happen. I mean, it could potentially not, but the plans that he supported as a Republican senator is direct payments to taxpayers of the $1,200 stimulus checks, more funding for hospitals and testing, and more funding for PPP. He emphasized the importance of Utahns to reach out to the representatives. It was pretty interesting. He was just saying that congressmen and senators, that their office staff, they all keep a tally of constituents' concerns, and it really can have an effect on what they'll fight for, and pro or aft. It really is. He was just saying that there's a big impact if you reach out to your representatives. And so then he tapped into the importance of outdoor recreation and its direct link to Utah's economics, and not just for businesses, but for the people who live here. He mentioned that the Recreational Trails Program, the RTP, is in long-term reauthorization of $300 million, which we are the grantees of many of those funds here in Grand County. He also mentioned off-road sales are up 50% in Utah. And there was 81% of Utahns that got out into the outdoors. So, I mean, it's a good thing. For some communities, their state recreation areas have seen increases of 145%. So it's great, but then it's going to bring about, how are we going to care for these areas that are getting so heavily used? So Romney, this was an interesting thing. He was questioned about his negative vote on the Great American Outdoor Act. And, so this is an outdoor rec community, trying to peg him as to why he voted against the funding. And his reason, he purported, was that it was the provision that was added into the $900 million bill that required the Land and Water Conservation Fund to use 40% or $360 million of the money every year for federal land acquisition. And Romney believed that, we already have enough, federal lands, and we need to put it back into state hands. So then he also mentioned that the state is looking at rural development to help build main streets around outdoor recreation. And so was hoping to question if they are looking at Moab as an example or like how to do it or how not to do it. So, but it is good news for us, because I think there is going to be more funding for our community, because they are really, realizing the importance of outdoor recreation. I had an airport board meeting, and things are moving in a positive direction, but we're, still 65% of normal as of last year. There's some of the smaller businesses, like the skydive company and the helicopter tourism business, they're up, but the flight-based operation is 60% down from last year. I had a Salt Lake Chamber of Commerce Utah Leads Together webinar presentation with Natalie Gocknauer. She's just my hero. I really enjoy every time she gives information. So she's the director of the Cam Gardner Policy Institute and the chief economist for the Salt Lake Chamber. And she was just, going over, where we are as a state, that our unemployment is around 5.2%, but it's half of what the current national numbers are. There's some things that Utah is doing really well. And, again, she talked about the hardest hit industry was leisure and hospitality. And the second hardest hit sector is the natural resources sector, which is down 10.4. And so our Utah energy sector distribution is low because oil prices and slowing global demand, which depresses pricing for commodities. So we're doing less mining. Construction for big infrastructure is one of the highest revenue generating sectors that we have in the state. Everything is going good with big projects. Good news is that we're tied with Idaho, and as the smallest contraction for job losses in the nation. So retail sales, and that was interesting in Clint's report that he sent us through our emails. Retail sales, if you look at what Utah is doing, it looks like we weren't hit that hard. But what has happened is that our retail sales are high, but it's in non-traditional retail. So it's not in restaurants and travel, but it's in e-commerce and home improvements and outdoor equipment. And then so Natalie went over the HERO Stimulus Act and what has the biggest bang for your buck in economist terms, and stimulus checks, not so much. But SNAP program. You know, she says that's one of your biggest returns on investment for funds. So let's see here. I had the special council meeting on masks on the 19th. I went to a school board, sat in on a school board meeting on the 19th. The district is working hard on numbers for socially distancing children in each grade. The school is trying to be flexible and working with parents to let them decide what they're comfortable with, like in classroom teaching or online or through the approved online schooling outside of the school districts. But they physically called every single parent to let them know what's expected of them to participate in online teaching. You know, they were emphasizing that it's not going to be like what happened in the spring, where there was for some grades there was very little participation. So there's going to be more accountability. Liana Etchberger gave an update on USU, and this is super exciting to see. USU actually, they received CARES Act funding, and it's being implemented in our community right now through the Utah's Learn and Work program. So qualified individuals who are underemployed or unemployed will have their tuition paid through the governor's office if they are accepted into the programs. And in Moab, the programs that we have received that are brand new is that there's a CNA program that is currently at capacity, and they've just built a wait list for that. We have computer science now and CTE programs, which is career and technical education. So any student that is working in the or going to school at USU, they can potentially get a job with in the K through 12 program as teaching assistants and as CTE educators themselves in the classroom. So this is an opportunity to offer certificate programs to get people retrained, educated, and back on their feet. So that's really exciting. Like Emily mentioned, I manned the census booth at the Market on Center. That was super fun, and it was interesting to hear why some people haven't filled out their census and feeling disenfranchised and not trusting the government. And so it was fun to try to give out free census swag and talk about the importance of the census. And we bumped up just incrementally, like we are at 56.5% in Moab, and the county is at 51.3%. And then today I had a key leaderboard meeting. And if I can, this is just going to take me a minute, but the family and economic changes are happening rapidly in the state of Utah. Between a robust need for employers to find reliable help and parents trying to find quality, safe educational programs for the young children, higher living costs make it almost impossible for a one-person working household. 59% of working Utah women have children under the age of 6, but even if families could afford to survive off a one-income household, women are choosing to work outside of the home. We are in such short supply of childcare in Moab. Families often rely on unpaid childcare or juggling work schedules so one parent or caregiver can be at home. In fact, we are the highest rated in terms of needed childcare in the state based on population. It shows there was a study that was just done by the Workforce Services that Kelly Thornton shared with me, and all the information came from the census. The census is amazing, but they 465 kids in our community. That's the need, and Wasatch is the second highest, which is 1,900 kids. Daggett County is the lowest of 13 kids are in need. Research has shown that not only having a safe place for our children is important, but that the first 3 years of early childhood development and education is particularly important for children experiencing economic hardship, English learners, and children with special developmental needs. Okay, so here it comes. We are in a position right now to actually make a difference. Carrie Aldred from oh my gosh, what's the children's program for daycare. Emily, you know the name.
Let's start.
Yes, thank you. So Early Head Start Intervention. There, Carrie is going after a grant for $750,000, and she wants to put a very big portion of that funds into Moab. And what I'm asking council is if we need 2 letters of intent that we have a space to do a Head Start program. They will be in charge of hiring and training and actually doing renovations for a space if we have it. And I brought up the Scout House as maybe a potential opportunity to have a child care during the day. So we kind of need a letter of intent, and we have to find out what if the Scout House is even a possibility. They can actually pay rent, so the city could make money on it, but also offer it an in-kind donation because they don't have the time to buy the land. But there's money to do this, and we need 2 letters. And the school district is going to reach out to the land trust to see if at Arroyo Crossing they might have a space. And then the school district is also reaching out to churches to find out if they have another space. And then Head Start at the building that they have now, they are looking at doing a double shift. So it's actually going to be more relevant to our community and the people who need safe childcare at night. So they'll do a morning shift, and then they'll also have a night shift up until like 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
So Karen, what we can do is put that on our next meeting's agenda, and in the interim, we can work through that. Does that sound good?
That sounds fabulous. But I just want you guys to give you a heads up because, yeah, the time is now and funding's here. So, yeah, if we can push the needle forward, that can make a big difference in generational poverty as well. So, and that's it.
Thank you. We are still in reports. Kaylin Jones.
It was a relatively quiet week for me. So one thing that I would add is that the county council bit the bullet, and they got their enough data to make a determination on reallocation of TRT to the various districts that support it. And as I understand it, it's about a 50% cut across the board. So solid waste special service district is in the process of integrating that into our amended budget, and I imagine will be impacting other districts as well. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Kaylin. Okay, let's see. We are now moving on to administrative reports. So Joel, I know you've got some things. We're going to hear from Clint, and then we will have our electronic meeting discussion. Joel?
Sounds good. Summer, could you mute? All right, I'll be quick. We are working on a new format for citizens to be heard as long as we stay in the electronic format. We think that we need to get a better form for that, a better format for that to be a continuing process as we continue to operate in the electronic age. So we're working on that. We're hoping that we can have that dealt with by the next meeting. Another thing we need to talk about real quick is when we put out our annual meeting schedule, which we're required to do under Utah State Code under the Open and Public Meetings Act, we're required to put out our meeting schedule for the entire year. For September, we always put out the first meeting earlier and the second meeting a little later, usually because of leagues of cities and towns. We're usually gone to the fall convention. Well, we're not having that this year. So I would like your guys' permission to move the meeting in September from the 1st to the 8th, just to give us a little more time between meetings here. And that'll also give us more time to get the citizens to be heard. New format out there on the next meeting is, do I have any complaints about changing the meeting on the 1st to the 8th? Okay, so we'll do that.
That would be when we would regularly have it anyway. So it's following our regular, so.
Yeah, it's moved up because of Leagues of Cities and Towns normally is held that week.
Okay.
Our SCADA systems are fully up and running after the power outage. Everything seems to be good. We got all the servers up and operating. The only thing we're still struggling with following that is the generator here at City Hall. There was several issues with generators through that power surge, through some issues. We're struggling to get someone to come work on ours. So we're still in the process. They were supposed to be here yesterday and they didn't come. We got after them today and they said they were getting to us as quickly as possible. We reiterated that it's an emergency generator for emergency purposes, and we're continue to push and work on that to get it fixed. So the salt shed where it blew off, we got a bid. Bid is workable with what the trust is willing to pay. So you should see that start getting fixed here sooner rather than later at this point. Bike Skills Park is up and go, or operation is to build it is up and going. Met with some of the workers over there. They're doing a great job. It's happening. Exciting. So we'll keep going with that. The widening, you saw they're doing some center paving this week. Seems to be on time. Anytime we do roads, it's always an interesting bet once we start digging. You start finding stuff that no one even knew existed. It's a treasure hunt, usually filled with nothing but pipes, but nonetheless, it's a treasure hunt. So that's still happening. We're going to talk about Walnut Lane here in a little bit. Lisa asked me to remind you guys that the hotspot survey is out and it is open until Friday. The link is on the city website, our Facebook page, and Twitter. So if Karen or Carly want to expand on that, or if that's good enough, we'll let everyone know that that's out there. So Proposition 8 is information is being distributed by the city. It's out there. We as employees of the city are not allowed to advocate for it or against it. We are just allowed to provide information, which we are doing. You will see banners in front of our facilities notifying people that Proposition 8 is on the ballot. They don't advocate for it or against it. They're just informative banners letting people know what Proposition 8 is and that it's there. If anyone has questions, we do have a question and answer form on our webpage. One of the main questions we keep getting over and over again is how will the money be spent? That is a question for each and every council. Every year we go through budget. The money will be strictly used for parks, art, and recreation. We cannot use it for anything else. So that money in some form will be used for those programs. They can be city programs or they can be non-for-profit groups that qualify for that money as well, for like a Moab Arts Council or something like that. So at some point we will have, if it passes, we would have application process for those groups where they could apply and attempt to get funding for those groups through that money that we gather through it. It's about a penny on every $10 that's spent. It's only on sales tax, so it is not taxed on gas or unprepared food. So the vast majority of what you're buying at City Market and the gas you're buying is not taxed under this. It is essentially a tourist tax. The vast majority of it will be paid by tourists who come to town. And so that's the fact. That's out there. Under state law for the Proposition 8, the governing body of the city, which is you guys, is required to turn in an argument on behalf of the proposition. And that's due basically the end of this week. So I know you guys have been working on that. You can either turn that into myself and I can get that over to Quinn, or we can just have you guys give that straight to Quinn over at the county and go from there. But we do, under state law, we're required for you guys to provide that by the end of this week.
But is that something that I need to give directly to no, you can do it?
I don't care. It's not a big deal if you bring it to us and we turn it in. Like, it's a state required, by state law, we're required to do it. So you bringing it here and us making sure it gets in is not us advocating for it. It's us making sure that you are in compliance with state code. So Tani,
We do that individually or we do that as a body?
as a body.
So I sent you all a link to the document and said, give me some edits. And I think I've received from Ronnie, and did somebody else comment already?
I just don't think I've seen it yet.
Okay. I can resend the email. Yeah, so it's fresh in your inbox, but we really have, I really want to go through the comments tomorrow. So,
Yeah, let me look. I just probably haven't seen it yet.
okay.
Staff has worked really hard to make sure we're compliant on that, to make sure we're following the guidelines. Carly and Lori, myself, Lisa, McKetta, Liz, Pat, all the people at the rec department. And we've got it to the point where it's legally correct. And at this point, it's now advocacy, and we kind of have to step back and just let the process shake out, however the process is going to shake out. We did create a timeline out of the legal code. We provided that to the county so they could have it as well as we go through the process. Lisa has been running ads in the paper, letting people know the information they need. If people want to write an argument against Proposition 8, they can do that. That information was in the paper in our last ad. If people want to write on behalf of it, they can do that. There's information on how to do that with the county clerk is in the paper in our last ad as well. So all that information's out there. At this point, we as a staff are kind of going to just step back and make sure we hit those timelines and those deadlines and post the information. Once those arguments for and against by citizens through the county, through the actual process are done, we're required to put those up on our webpage, and we'll make sure that all of that is still met. But as far as getting it on the ballot, getting it a proposition number, all the legal work that needed done, we've squared that up, and we're basically good to go at this point. So it will be on the ballot November 3rd, and I encourage everyone to vote. Whether you vote for it or against it is entirely up to you, but just vote, and vote for everything else that's on there while you're at it. Everyone needs to be voting. So, Lonnie?
Joel, just a quick question. Do we know offhand yet when people can expect their ballots? But the other thing they can do is vote early, but usually we find that out closer to the election, but I think usually it's about 3 weeks. I don't know.
Don't hold me to it, and I don't want to lock Quinn in,
Yeah.
but my understanding is that they're going out October 13th, and you should have them by the 18th. And don't hold me to that, and I don't want to hold him to that, but that's loosely what I've been told.
Okay.
I didn't see it in my email, by the way, Emily, the letter you were talking, the informative thing that, so if you guys could resend that, that'd be great by me.
It was a little while ago, Mike. I thought it was brand new, but I found it. It was, hang on, I'll tell you when.
I just resent it, so you'll have it.
Okay.
Any final comments? And then we'll make sure we hit the deadline. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Any other questions about Proposition 8? And one question I keep getting is, why is it Proposition 8 when there's nothing else on our county ballot? They get numbered through the state, and the state issues those numbers. And so they get numbered as they come through the state office. And so that's why we're number 8. So when you get to your ballot and you see Proposition 8 and Proposition 10, you're not missing anything 1 through 7 or whatever numbers aren't there. It's just the way that they number them. But the main question is, how are we going to spend it? And that would be determined by council annually through our budget process. How much goes to city projects, how much goes out to the community. All that would be determined every year through a council action.
And I do list that in that letter.
Carly, was there any other questions we wanted to address?
None that come to mind right now. That's bad.
Oh,
Oh, wait, it was about the public meeting. Yes. How they wanted to conduct that.
So we're also required by state law to have a public meeting. The code to do this is quite fun to play with. We're required to do it. It's something like no more than 45 days before the election, but no fewer than 4 days before the election. So our window is, and I could pull it up real quick, but it's something like September 20th to October 26th or something. And so we have to have a public meeting in order to be in compliance with state code. We're really wrestling with how to do that. If we want to do that, try to do it electronically. If we want to just do it in a normal council type setting meeting, citizens have to have a right to be heard. They have to be able to speak to the issue. And so we have to provide that. So we'd have to do that through Zoom, or we could do it in a public meeting in person, but I'm afraid that a lot of people may show up for something like this. And so we're working that out. I don't know if you guys would have a preference.
Hey, let's save that deliberation when we get to the electronic meeting discussion. What if we go ahead? Do you have any other words, Joel? Because we could have Clint go and then we could go right into that if you want.
That sounds great.
Okay, Clint, you're up. Thanks for waiting.
It's all good. All right, I'll make this pretty quick. After getting all the information for put together for what Karen had asked for at last meeting, which thank you for mentioning that. That's can you guys see my screen? Okay. I ended up diving deeper into it and kind of looking at it to see what our actual COVID impact was.
I think Joel was going to say it's little.
It's little.
Yeah, can you just zoom in a little bit, Clint?
Yeah, I can.
Who's up there?
I think. How's that? Is that better or worse?
No, now we're looking at your Blues home screen.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Files.
There you go. Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So from there, I ended up taking March, April, and May of this year, which is the 3 biggest impacted COVID months. And I took all of the cities in Utah that did at least $50 million of gross taxable sales and purchases in those months combined. So of that, there was 62 cities in Utah that qualified. And this little chart here is sorted at the moment in this column that you'll see in E, which is March, April, May 2020. So you can see Salt Lake in those 3 months did $1.8 billion compared to almost 1, and there's a $224 million difference or shortfall from this year to last year. If I sort that all the way to the bottom, you can see that Moab comes down in, and in those 3 months this year, we did $54 million of gross taxable sales and purchases compared to $96 million at this time last year. So you can see that Moab right now, of those 62 cities, we're ranked 58th. Now, if I sort these columns by the biggest impact of COVID, dollar-wise, Moab comes in number 5. Moab, the impact of COVID in those 3 months, we lost $41 million of gross taxable sales and purchases, which is huge. That ranks number 5 of the 62 cities that I brought in. And a lot of this is just informational purposes, so you can kind of see where we're at. If I sort it over here, I'm going to go over to the side here. Sorry, let's bring this back down so you can kind of see where Moab's at here. If I sort this by percentage, Moab is number 1. We were 43% down. Park City comes in at 41, and you can see on down here. What's very interesting is that of the 62 cities that I brought into this calculation, only 13 of those cities actually had less gross taxable sales and purchases in 2020 than 19. I mean, I think that's a lot of it says that most cities are run on property taxes, and we are obviously, and Park City is very heavily as well, we're relying on sales tax. So you can see that, and I know I don't want to get my pom-poms out and say that we're number one and this is awesome, but it is it's a heavy number. So the way that the other thing I wanted to mention is the way that the state did the CARES Act, or I guess the feds did the CARES Act, is they did it by population. And over on the far right here, what you see in yellow is Moab. CARES Act funding, if I sort that, we also, of those 62 cities, had the least amount of CARES Act funding. So we had the number 1%, we're the number one affected community or city, and we also got the least amount of CARES Act funding. I mean, if I compare that to a city like St. George, which I think is pretty interesting. St. George in those 3 months in 2019 had 660 million. Same 3 months this year, 709 million. So they actually had 50 million increase. And they also got $8 million in CARES Act funding. So just putting it out there so there's information. It's very interesting. What this is what I sent out to the council. All I did is took that and summarized it so that and ranked it. So that's what I wanted to kind of describe and let you guys know that, I mean, despite how heavily impacted Moab's been, I mean, I still think we're in a pretty good position. I mean,
will you sort it by rank percentage again and do it opposite?
Opposite?
Yep. You can see those cities all receive CARES funding. Actually sort it by the dollar opposite. State rank cash.
So all of those cities, as you see over here, like Utah and Salt Lake County, didn't do CARES funding because they're too big. But
yeah,
if you do it by cash.
Yeah. So someone like St. George during COVID actually had $49 million in taxable sales increased during the COVID period, and then got CARES funding. And what you can see here, like someone like West Jordan, St. George, Spanish Fork, Salt Lake, West Valley, a lot of those cities like West Jordan, West Valley, they're very residential based. A lot of their citizens commute into Salt Lake, into other city areas to work. And so once everyone got sent home in April and was home, point of sale for deliveries is done off of point of delivery for sales tax. So if you have 114,000 residents who are all stuck home and everyone's ordering off Amazon, you're getting all that sales tax that before they may have driven to an actual shopping district outside of their city to purchase. But someone like Moab, where we have a tourist-based economy, or Salt Lake, do it by percentage again, Clint, and do it from Moab down. If you have someone like Moab or Park City or Salt Lake or Murray, where people are commuting into those cities every day, either to go to work or go on vacation, once people were locked down, we weren't getting any funding. You can see only 13 cities on this list lost money during COVID. And if you look at it, only basically the top, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 were double digits. And only the top 5 were 15% or more. We were 43% number one in the state and got the least amount of CARES funding.
Because it was population based.
Because it was population based. And someone like West Jordan, who made $75 million more in sales during that period.
Hey, just another.
That the League of Cities and Towns, that was advocating for that population.
We have already set meetings for next week regarding this.
But just to point out, just another reason to do your census.
It's just crazy to me that only 13 cities lost money during sales tax revenue during this period. but everyone got cut of the CARES so long as their population was, even if they made money, they still got to cut a CARES funding.
Well, I think we've got, a potential other tranche coming. We still have the redistribution of additional GO-ED dollars. So I think the sooner we get this out, the better.
Yeah.
And really highlight the fact that it is a terrible position to be number one in terms of the percent difference from last year to this year, and be ranked number 5 in the amount of dollars that were not that were lost, but then being last in terms of resources and care.
Number one as far as hardest hit, last in far as funding.
Yeah.
Mayor and Joel, in terms of meetings you guys are setting up, are those with like ULCT or also our representatives? Just, obviously good information for them to have.
Our first meeting is with Casey Hill. We're going to follow that up with a meeting with the league, and then we're going to start meeting with our representatives.
Okay, thank you.
I'll send this out to the group so that you all have it. And if you have anything else that you'd like me to look at, or any other months, well, they're supposed to have June data done by the end of this week, and I'll update that file and I'll send it over to the group. And yeah, I mean, I appreciate you bringing it up, Karen, because it enlightened me.
Oh, you bet. Hey, Clint, are you feeling like comfortable? Have you met with the ULCT yet, or?
I haven't met with them. I've had a couple of different phone calls, but that's kind of the gist of it at the moment. So I'll be involved with Joel when he talks to him, though.
Hey, thanks for your work on this.
Thank you.
And real quickly, I want, as infuriating as all that is to me, nonetheless, I want to thank our staff, because that drives home how hard this has been and how hard we have been hit. And the concessions that this staff and the employees of this city have made through the first round of reductions in February, followed by the next round of reductions that were done in May. Like, I have actually heard a couple people ask me, how can you guys try and do Prop 8 when you don't have enough money? Why don't you try and cut some people or do something about it first? And I'm like, I don't know what council meetings you're watching, but clearly not any, because we have done nothing but cuts for the last 6 months and have basically cut 25% of our overhead and costs in the last 6 months. So I just want to thank this staff, because everything Clint just showed you shows you how hard we have been hit, and we're still functioning at the level we are, with the morale that is within the city hall and within city employees is amazing to me. And it's a testament to this staff, and I want to thank them so much for what they've done. So that's all I have tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
How about one more thank you for you, Joel, for being still relatively new to Moab, and as our city manager, and being hit with a pandemic and social justice. This has been a pretty thick year, and you've not only stayed above water, but you're floating with stuff. So
it's been 2020 over here for us as well. Well, before you know it, it's going to be 2021. It's got to get better.
When will it be 2021?
No, it's almost September. It's almost September.
Well, thank you, Joel. Thank you, Clint. We're number one. We are number one. It's like the black pom-poms, I think, Clint, is what we want to break out, right? The black pom-poms. Okay. Well, we're still at administrative reports, but we did want to make room, in particular during our meeting, to discuss electronic meetings. Clint, I think you're free to go if you want to sign off, but it's up to you if you want to stick around.
I think I'm going to stick around for the Walnut Lane portion. So.
Oh yeah, great. Okay, well, electronic meeting discussion. So a couple of things that we want to clarify here is give members of this council the opportunity to speak on your, speak to your thoughts about continuing to meet electronically, as well as our procedure of how we've been accepting citizens to be heard comments, and how and if we might change that to be a little more open to public participation in our meetings. So first things first, question to all of you, upon meeting electronically, are you comfortable with the 30 days? And when we go to have our meeting, shall we just revisit every 30 days how we're feeling? And are we feeling today good about continuing to meet electronically? Want me to just call you out? Kaylin.
I'm feeling good about it now. It can change fast, so I think we should keep I mean, the COVID situation can change fast with a small population, so I think we should continue evaluating it as we go, but listening to you recite that order once a month seems like a small price to pay for the safety of ourselves and our potential audience.
Thank you. Other members?
Yeah, I agree with that. Evaluating every 30 days is a good idea because it comes and goes. I mean, who knows what's going to happen, but that sounds good to me.
Others? Tony?
I'm comfortable meeting this way. And I agree with Kaylin, and I don't think that's that big of a deal to listen to you read the order once a month. I think there's still enough that's unknown, and there are people on the council and people that very often frequent our meetings that are in those high-risk groups, and I would just hate like heck to have somebody get sick.
Okay. Karen, Ronnie?
Fine with 30 days.
Yeah, I'm fine with it for 30 days. I'd really like to revisit when we're going to meet again. I mean, I feel like I'm on other boards that we are meeting. Obviously, we don't, there's not public who they're welcome to come, but they haven't. I feel like we're in a position where, you know, here we're looking at sales tax revenues and we're expecting, you know, we're excited when the revenue's coming in and everyone's working, and yet us as a council, we're not meeting in person. I just don't want the community to think that we are thinking we are so entitled or precious that we wouldn't meet in person as well. I mean, we're expecting people to work. People are working. They're doing a great job. I feel like as a council and our staff, like we can get innovative about, you know, you might have to limit the amount of people who come into the conference room, or maybe we use the gym as a larger space. Or, I mean, I feel like we have other opportunities, and I mean, I'm ready when you guys are. But and I also mentioned earlier, I do not want the public to think that there is a consensus from this council that we're waiting for a vaccine to meet, because that is absolutely 100% not the case for me. So I don't know, there was an email that was generated that was out there, and I don't know where that came from, or that was just, you know, one council's opinion, but that definitely is not my opinion.
We did have a prior meeting where we were discussing some of this, and we that did come up just, you know, probably in a sentence. So I don't think we've taken the time to visit that again. And I'm happy to discuss this in another 30 days. I mean, I'm in a household situation where my partner travels a lot to hotspots around the country. So I kind of feel like I'd be putting you guys and other people at risk. But I'm happy to revisit that discussion.
And for what it's worth from me, y'all give me the go ahead, and I'm happy to open the doors and meet in our chambers. Now, as for, so we've got, I guess, in 30 days, conceivably 2 meetings. more meeting online. Let's talk about citizens to be heard. So there is a procedure where we can have citizens that would like to be heard waiting in what's called the waiting room. And they can watch on YouTube until, you know, we get close to the time when citizens can be heard, and then we can bring them in. So right now I'm looking at the clock, it's 8:22. And so we're about to hit our citizens to be heard item on our agenda. And we can certainly open up to real-time citizens joining our meeting, or we can continue to collect the electronic citizens to be heard documents. So I just want to hear from all of you. Summer, just double checking with you. I saw 0 comments submitted for tonight's meeting. Is that still the case?
That is still the case.
Okay, so I mean, there is, you know, concern that maybe people are not submitting because they know they can just email us, but a citizen to be heard is on the public record of a meeting. So I guess the question to this council is, would you like to change the way we do citizens to be heard? Or do you want to stay the course while we meet electronically? And I guess let's do by thumbs, because that might be quicker. I guess, Kaylin, you'll tell us your thumb position. But I guess thumbs up if you want to stay the course. How about that? I see no thumbs. So thumbs up that you want to start inviting people to the waiting room? All right.
Thumbs up.
Well, I don't know.
Oh, Johnny's got a crooked thumb.
It's a crooked thumb.
Who's got?
I have a couple of thoughts. If maybe we could bump citizens to be heard closer to the beginning of the meeting so they aren't waiting for an hour and a half.
Happy to do that.
I'm guessing that if they were actually heard and were participated by a Zoom, they'd still be limited to their 2-minute limit. And I can see, 3 minutes, sorry. And I can see if they had more to say that maybe submitting them electronically would be a way to have a little bit more time, but they wouldn't take up the time. So I don't know why we couldn't do some hybrid of both. Is that too clunky, or could we give them the choice if they want to, you know, wait in the waiting room? They can speak for their 2-3 minutes, and if they have more to say, they can submit it via electronic means.
The problem with that was the electronic ones were limited to 400 words, which was the equivalent of about 3 minutes. So they were always limited to, so it was fair that people were getting the same amount of.
Oh, okay. All right.
And I guess I felt when people want to tell us something longer, they usually email us anyway, you know, something lengthy.
I'm comfortable with doing one or the other. I think both gets complicated.
The only concern we have as staff is would we be more comfortable with a phone-in process for citizens to be heard? If we allow people to get on the Zoom with this, and I know other places are doing this, but we can't control what's behind them. If they share their screen and put something up on the screen, we either have to make it so no one can share their screen throughout the whole meeting, because that's the way Zoom works, or we have to, anyone who comes into this room has the ability to share their screen, or no one does. So if you have a citizen to be heard who waits in the lobby and then they get on in the meeting, they potentially could put something up that we may or may not want to see. So are we comfortable if it's a phone in lieu of the video conferencing?
Let's do the video and roll the dice. 2020. I feel comfortable with that.
My goal is to stay off CNN, Mayor.
And I feel comfortable with us shutting them down if there's the use of profanity or images that are offensive. We'll shut them. We'll just turn it off.
Yeah. So do I have this right? Summer and the mayor are in complete control of who presents and who does not? Is that right?
Summer is
The
definitely.
host has control over who presents and who does not.
Yeah. I would like to see the video present. Make it as much as possible like a real meeting room, okay? And I don't see why this wouldn't work out just great. Somebody else expressed the opinion that for other entities may not have as good a handle on how to make this work, but Summer's great at this, and I don't see any problem. I'd love to do it with the video and the audio. And the mayor, Emily, you can give more than 3 minutes if you want. It's up to you.
Well, let's stick with 3 and let's try. So for our next meeting, we will accept citizens to be heard over the by giving them the Zoom in address, and we will move the agenda item to just after the approval of minutes.
So probably the form of it will be something along the lines of, like before when we were in person, they had to fill out a form, present the form, and then we went from there. They'll have to fill a form out online, submit that, and then they'll get the Zoom link from there. Something along those.
And will we
Yeah.
be able to, put together any set of standards? No profanity, no.
We can do that. We can do that currently. Profanity is not protected speech. So if someone starts acting inappropriately, we have every right to shut that down.
Okay.
And I'd like to add, I like Tawny's idea of letting them go before the member reports, okay? So they don't have to hang around for an hour and a half. That's a great idea.
Yep, we'll do it. And what we can do is move COVID updates down to administrative reports, Joel, as well. Okay. I feel like there was one other thing that we were going to discuss regarding electronic meeting when, Joel, you were talking about the electronic
Public
meeting.
hearing.
Right?
The what?
Public hearing.
Public
Yeah,
meeting.
we were going to hold the public hearing. So in this way, we'll hold a public hearing, and people, if they want to comment, will.
Well, I think what we'll do on that, Mayor, is Carly and I will keep working at that, and then at the next meeting on the 8th, we'll bring it forward to how we're going to do it.
I'd like not to have a separate meeting. I'd like it to be part of our main meeting.
It has to be a separate meeting.
It has to be a separate
Special
meeting.
meeting. Oh,
And it has to start at or after 6 p.m.
It's a lot of rules.
There are a lot of rules on how we have, literally one of the rules is it has to start at or after 6 p.m.
okay. Well, would it be okay if we were able to shuffle our agenda, and in lieu of a regular city council meeting, we would have that meeting?
If you guys are willing to do that, then we're more than happy to. We'll make it work under those guidelines.
Well, so for example, tonight, we've got, 2 main agenda items, and that's it. So not next meeting, but the meeting after. We could look at if that falls within the time frame. Does it?
I'm looking real quick.
So this is just a heads up to council then. That is what we could work toward doing. So
In the 20s, so that should be fine.
okay, Ronnie?
Okay, yeah, no, I was just gonna ask if we were gonna get,
Oh,
That internet out in California is not very good.
cliffhanger. Okay, she'll come back, and when she does, we'll be on to the next agenda item. Anything else from anybody while we're waiting for Ronnie to come back with her comment?
sorry, I keep freezing.
No worries.
All I was gonna say is, yeah, I'm happy as long as we do it before the ballots come out. You know how it is. Sometimes it's nice to have something close to when your ballot comes, so you haven't totally forgotten what you heard.
That's an excellent point, Ronnie. And we have to have this public hearing, and then we have to publish notice of the election once per week for 3 consecutive weeks before the election in the Times. And it gives us windows when we have to do that. We are going to do that October 1st, 8th, and 15th, because we want that will be our last thing. We want everything done by the 15th. So when people are voting, they have all the information they want or don't want or need, or however they want to view that. So, but our goal is to have this entire process wrapped up October 15th. So as people start voting, there's not more stuff coming out and being done.
All right, let's move on we are now at the section of citizens to be heard, and we have not received any comments for citizens to be heard. Moving on from that, we have in the waiting room a woman, Amanda McIntosh from the Southeastern Utah Health District, to talk to us, a 10-minute presentation about suicide prevention and awareness activities. I just want to say to Amanda, welcome, and also thank you and thank your team. You've always been very willing to come and meet with us, and I've just been so grateful to Brady and Orion for their leadership and their communication. So I've been so grateful to all of them. You're so lucky to work with such a great team, and welcome to Moab City Council.
Well, thank you for having me. I sincerely appreciate taking just a few minutes out of your meeting to talk about a couple of things that we're working on with the health department. And you're right, I'm very lucky to work for Brady. He's a wonderful leader and definitely is very employee conscious and takes good care of us. So we're lucky to have him. But for those of you that don't know me, I'm Amanda McIntosh. I'm the suicide prevention specialist with the Southeast Utah Health Department. I also serve as the vice president of the Hope Squad of Carbon, Emery, and Grand counties. And just a little bit of my background before I get into my discussion tonight is my journey with suicide actually began on July 21st, 2014, when my husband took his life in front of me. And so since then, I have been teamed up with the Hope Squad, spreading messages of hope and awareness and prevention. And then in 2018, there was a special legislative session that allocated funding to the health department to create my position, because Carbon, Emery, and Grand counties actually run the state's numbers as far as suicides go. And so it's very near and dear to my heart. And now that I can work in it full time, I come from a banking background, so this is all new territory, but I'm trying to cultivate a stigma-free environment to talk about mental health. And I had emailed you all back in June talking about a real convo campaign that I was starting. And I was naive then, thinking that maybe we'd be done with COVID and that I could come see you all in person. But that has obviously gone to pot. So I'm still trying to create events that incorporate our Moab family, our Emery County family, and Carbon County family. September is Suicide Prevention and Awareness Month, the whole month long, but we celebrate it and take notice of it during the week of September 6th through the 12th. And there are a couple of activities that we have planned for all three they're invited, all three counties are invited, but starting with World Suicide Prevention Day, which is Thursday, September 10th. And last year I was able to host two separate candlelight vigils, one in Carbon County and one in Emery County. Not to leave out Grand County, but Grand County really isn't contributing to our suicide numbers, although you've had a couple of suicides this year. The main focus for me and my objectives last year was Carbon and Emery. But this year I'm extending my arms to my Moab family, because I have been able to spend some time down there in the schools and whatnot, and just realize how much our services and resources are needed. So World Suicide Prevention Day is Thursday, September 10th, and we're hosting candlelight vigils in all three counties. In Emery County, it's going to be held at the courthouse. There's a park behind the courthouse in Emery County. And then in Price, we're doing it at the Price Peace Gardens. And I was hoping tonight to get permission to use either Old City Park or Rotary Park on that evening from 7:30 p.m. until 9 o'clock p.m. During World Suicide Prevention Day at 8 o'clock worldwide, candles are lit from 8 o'clock p.m. to 9 o'clock p.m. The health department will be supplying these candles. They are battery operated. And we will work with Sheila Sarton at your local branch, as well as having Tara Wilder present in case the event is too activating or triggering for people in the community that are struggling with either depression or the loss of somebody by suicide. So that's my main priority tonight, is just to gain that permission. I did reach out to Carly earlier this week, maybe it was last week, but knew that I was coming on tonight, so to follow up with that. So I guess that would be my first question, is if I have permission to do that.
Well, Amanda, I have a third location to offer you. So we've been hosting our Market on Center here in front of City Hall. We have an Indigenous People celebration every year on the front lawn of Moab City Hall. And I want to offer that as a space because we're kitty corner to Four Corners behavioral health as well. It would be easier for them for setup and takedown, and might be easier for you as an organizer. And I would certainly be happy to volunteer and help set up and do whatever to make this facility open. So it's a good place, and we can make available bathrooms as well. We have a PA, so we could have some amplified speaking if you'd like.
Perfect.
What do you think about that space?
I'm completely happy with that. What is the address of that? And I can update our flyers. And I know that there's COVID concern when I've presented to Emory County as well as Carbon County about COVID. And I've been working with Brady on that. And so all of the media that will be pushed out for this on Facebook and through radio and things like that, it will have the language of masks being required when physical distancing cannot be facilitated. So that portion is covered. But yes, that.
Yeah, the address is 217 East Center. We also have masks that we can make available for the event as well.
Oh, awesome. Okay, very good. Oh,
What's the date? Can you give the date again, please, for everyone listening?
So that is Thursday, September 10th. And Sheila Sarton, like I said, from the health department, and Tara Wilder will be there at 7:30. There's not really a whole lot to set up. There's mostly, just passing out the candles, and it'll have a safe space for people to either share their stories. A lot of times people like to even just say their person's name so that their names aren't forgotten, because they aren't how they died. They are who they are. And so we want to remember the lives that they lived and not how they died. So there is a safe space created so that they can talk and openly tell their story in a community of support. So.
Awesome. Joel?
Mayor, do we have any idea the number of attendees?
I don't. I've been involved with the Hope Squad for, 6 years. My husband died 6 years ago. And even at our biggest event, we had, and this was just last summer, we had 100 people. But when we do these smaller events like the Candlelight Vigil, we had 25 at each event, and they are free to leave whenever they like. Maybe they just want to come and grab the candle to take home, because traditionally the candle is lit in a window for an hour to signify that loss. But we felt getting our community together would be better, the more power to numbers. So I don't expect there to be a lot, especially middle of the week. It's kind of late. You guys, when do you guys go back to school?
September 8th. Well, the charter school's back in, but the public schools are September 8th. Charter's public school, I realize.
It'll be a school night, so I would assume that people wouldn't show up just because, like I said, it's late. But I am planning for 20-25 people at each event.
Well, either way, City Hall, I think Mayor's suggestion is great. We have the stairs that lead in that kind of work as a little pseudo stage. We can put the PA up there, and then people are above and can see who's speaking. If it is going to be larger, we have the ability to close the roads right out here in front of City Hall too, and give that extra space as well. So
wonderful, wonderful. Thank you.
Karen?
I was just gonna say, Amanda, if I'm curious though, if that's too out in the open, and if there was a reason to pick Rotary or Old City Park because there's more intimacy and it's not on a busy road. I mean, do we do you want that option still as well?
Well, there is a reverence that comes with any candlelight vigil, but where I'm not familiar with Moab enough to say, oh, I don't want to seclude people. You know what I mean? Like
right.
Doing ours in Price Peace Gardens, that's right on our main street, right? And it's because to seclude them or hush them away only adds to the stigma that it's not okay to be out in the open about it. And so I actually appreciate the mayor's suggestion of doing it there. If that's where celebrations and happy events are taking place, absolutely, let's have it there.
And if there's nothing occurring in the park and after 5, this Center Street's pretty quiet out here from the City Hall, actually. The Rotary Park's probably more busy than this area is once City Hall closes. And it's under the tree with the grass right there. It's a pretty good area, especially if you only have like 25 people to kind of spread out right there.
Okay, perfect.
Carly?
One other, just a little bit of not a hang up, but a detail is that Rotary Park, I think they asked about reserving it, which requires a fee and maybe a fee waiver, which we would have to notice on a next city.
I don't know that there's a fee to use City Hall lawn now.
There's not for City Hall, just for Rotary Park. So of course it's doable. Just let us know what you want us to do, but we would have to either waive that fee, City Hall is free, whatever you want.
Okay. We like free because I'm a donation-based organization. And even with the health department, I'm very limited on my budget, but I'm sure I'm running super close to time, but I also just wanted to invite you to other events that we're doing during that week. Unfortunately, they are in Carbon County. I'm growing the program, guys, I promise. I really am trying to concentrate on Grant County. I had multiple QPRs set up before COVID hit down at the high school and the middle school and a community one and at the hospital. So I really am trying to be out there more. But we are doing 2 movies in the park. On Wednesday, September 9th, we will be showing Kevin Hines' Suicide: The Ripple Effect. And Kevin Hines is a young man that jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge a number of years ago, and he lived to tell about it and produced a documentary that shows what things that he's been doing since his fall or his jump, such as putting the netting up around the bridge and posting signs with the lifeline number. Anyway, so we will be showing that on Wednesday, September 9th at 7:30 at the Helper City Park, if you want to take a gander to Helper. And then on that following Saturday, on the 12th, we will be showing Disney's Inside Out, geared more toward family, so that we can provide a safe space for our kids that have just gone back to school this last week to come forward and talk about the emotions that they have experienced during COVID. We as adults, we sometimes forget that they have emotions about things that are going on around them as well, and the perspective to see how we're taking it. So we wanted to provide them with a safe space to talk about their emotions and how they've coped with it, and also give their parents some takeaways to continue the conversation about emotions and how they affect kids and the good and bad that come with expressing the emotions for that. So that is also taking place at Helper City Park. And then one last thing, I swear I'm almost done. On Saturday, November 7th, we are hosting a 5K, 10K run in Goblin Valley State Park. And that event is titled Who Do You Run For? Because we're running amongst the hoodoos. And we would love to have Moab and Grand County's support and partnership in that and promoting it. I just listened to the numbers that Clint shared about you guys losing money and stuff. And although Goblin Valley is in Emery County, I think that it would be a very quick skip, hop, and a jump over to Moab to bring some tourists back into Moab. And so I'd like to have your partnership if you're interested. I don't know which one of you I would contact, but I'd love to. Hi, Tawny. I met Tawny back in January before COVID hit. So.
Yeah. No, I would love to partner with you if that's okay with Emily. If you want to use me as a conduit, that's fine.
Wonderful. Awesome. Okay.
When is the 5K run?
The 5K is on Saturday, November 7th I am just now getting into the process of setting up the registration, the site. I have come into a roadblock with where the money is going because I'm not a 501c3 yet. But as soon as I have that figured out, I will get it posted. I will send links to whoever and all to come out and join us. It's going to be an awesome event. I don't know if you've heard of Ryan Stream. He was a resident of Emory County, has gone through drug addiction and lost his mother to suicide, spent time in jail, and then got out of jail and spent 2 or 3 tours in Iraq defending our freedoms. And so he's our keynote speaker. We'll have t-shirts and swag, the tourism boards have jumped on board, and the university is on board. So it's going to be a really great event, and hopefully a cool one and not so hot.
Amanda, thank you so much. And thank you for the lightness with which you speak about the topic. It's quite heavy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye, Amanda.
Bye.
Okay, moving right along on our agenda. Oh gosh, where did my agenda go? Just one sec. Okay, we are now at old business, almost last item on the agenda. 8.1, discussion and update on Walnut Lane. So I'm looking for Caitlin, there you are.
Here.
Welcome to the meeting, thanks for your patience.
Yeah.
Item.
Thank you.
And yes, take it away.
Okay, so I was asked to give an update on Walnut Lane. So I prepared a presentation just to kind of focus our conversation. So I'm going to share my screen. If I can figure that out. Okay. So and my okay. So my computer monitors were acting really weird until 10 seconds ago. So I'm gonna see if I can.
So just so you know, what we're looking at is your desktop is the Walnut Lane updates PowerPoint. And if you hit start show, I bet it would just go right ahead.
Right, so I think I'm gonna have to stop it. This has happened to me one other time. Give me one moment. Sorry. Okay. I don't know if it's gonna work. Give me one moment.
Okay, so your PowerPoint presentation is up. We do see it.
You see it? Do you see my PowerPoint screen or?
Yeah, I mean, what I see right now is Walnut Lane updates, August 25, 2020, your title slide. And I see the slides on the left, but if you're not able to full screen it, that's fine. You can take us through. It's legible. You can just take us through like this. Click on slide 2.
Okay, we're just gonna go through like this because my Surface is not working with my monitors, so forgive me for that. So I just wanted to kind of briefly give you some updates. So first of all, site plan. We are still looking at our existing site plan that we received from Architectural Squared. because we, over the last couple of months, have been looking into the feasibility of acquiring an adjacent property. At this point, that doesn't look feasible. And so kind of based on some of the other things that we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to continue to move forward with making this site plan work. There are a few things on this site right now that are challenging. Right now, this site plan that was proposed initially from Architectural Squared was for 66 units, and I think we'll have to increase that a little bit to get closer to 80 in order for this project to pencil out. And we will have to increase the number of parking spaces that are currently included on this master plan, because right now they do not meet the PAD or the R4 codes. So as we progress with that, there are a few things that we wanted to talk about. We as staff, not necessarily tied to the Architectural Squared team, but I just wanted to fill you guys in a little bit on some of the current challenges with the Walnut Lane site that we have been experiencing. We as staff have worked through. I'm so thankful for so many people on the city staff that have helped, because I know that this project is above and beyond the job responsibilities of a lot of people that work on staff. So, first we've been working through a lot of legal challenges. The trailer that you see here was abandoned. It's been abandoned for probably almost a year, and we've had a lot of legal challenges with declaring it abandoned. And so I'm really grateful for Lori and Barry for working through that. We've been working through updating leases since we have gotten left our property management company. I've been working a lot with Marcy about Marcy and Clint with financial issues, kind of looking at pro formas and also trying to figure out on the property management side where everyone is at with rent payments and working with COVID and trying to get current tenants that are unable to pay their rent to apply for the Housing Relief Fund or other housing relief funds through CARES or other outlets. And then the last thing that I really want to focus on tonight is we've had a lot of maintenance issues. As you can see from this picture and from the next picture that I'm about to show you, Barry and I get calls and Marcy gets calls. A lot of staff get calls every week with maintenance issues, whether they're electrical or they're swamp coolers or someone's water line isn't working, or about a month ago, we had a tenant who had a gas leak in their trailer and we had to have Dominion go in and shut off their gas. And so we're trying to figure out specifically for this tenant situation, how to proceed, because it's going to need a substantial amount of work to improve her trailer to get it to the point where Dominion feels that it's safe enough to turn the gas back on, or whether we get her a new trailer. So just to show you a couple of other photos. So these two photos on the right are a couple of examples from one of our two vacant trailers.
Really quickly, is that a trailer that she owns or is that one that we own?
This is a trailer that we own that is vacant on the site. And we are
just referencing for the woman.
Oh, we own that. So that's with that case specifically, we have also run into legal issues with trying to figure out who actually owns some of the trailers, because we have been informed that people have paid money and say that they own them, and we've learned from the assessor's office that they don't actually own them. So that's been another level of legal issues, but we own her trailer. And so we as the city will need to figure out a solution for her, because if she can't have gas working on her trailer in the next few months, she's not going to have heat for the winter. And so we definitely want to be able to address that before the temperatures start dropping. So these next two pictures on the center and the right on this screen are just two examples from a vacant trailer that we own that we are in the process of figuring out when we want to demo them. So this picture in the center is in a bedroom. And you can see that there is a plastic bin that's taped to the ceiling to prevent water from leaking in. You can see that this has broken windows, and so there's a tarp taped over it. On the right, there's a swamp cooler that is exposed and looks really old. These are 2 pictures that Barry took within the last few weeks. And so I wanted to highlight these because I think that they're pretty representative of what a lot of the insides of the trailers look out there. I think that there are some that look better than this. There are definitely a lot that look a lot worse. So I just wanted to make that really transparent to the council and to the public that, you know, this is kind of the state of Walnut Lane right now. So kind of moving forward, we have been meeting as staff for the last few months to talk about solutions to this, just trying to figure out how to make these trailers habitable for current tenants. So, you know, city staff have been really involved on all sides, and I'm super appreciative for Kelly Oliver in particular for the amount of time he spends down there. Anytime we get a call from one of the tenants, we've, I think, done a really good job to address the issues as fast as we can. HR is currently advertising a job posting to hire a full-time mechanical technician that would work out there on the site and fix current issues. Instead of just waiting for us to get a call, we'll start working on those more proactively. We've also had conversations with the Multicultural Center and with MAPS and some other organizations about seeing if we can relocate some tenants offsite if they're interested in doing that. We've had some tenants that have been interested in that, but there's not a lot of rental housing available in Moab right now, so that's challenging. And so that kind of brought us to where we're at today, which is that we are posting an invitation for bids to see what kind of bids we would get for purchasing manufactured housing units to bring onto the site to replace current trailers. And so that should be published this Thursday and will be open until the end of the month, until September 27th. And I want to make that clear that this IFB is just kind of like our first step in moving forward and gathering some information about, you know, Clan and I have done some initial analysis of how much this would cost if we were to replace all the trailers, but we won't have a really good idea until we receive bids from interested companies. I've kept Architectural Squared informed on this, and I'll touch a little bit on that moving forward. But, you know, I kind of just wanted to, I think that we have a few options. You know, we can kind of, we're in the process of hiring a staff person, and we can, you know, I think that the city's gonna have to spend money in some avenue to improve these trailers and make them habitable. And we can either spend a lot of money on current trailers, fixing problems, fixing electrical and gas and furnaces and water systems and everything like that. Or we can start looking at replacing them, either with a more short-term, mid-term solution of purchasing manufactured homes and then either integrating them into the site plan or selling them. Or we can also look at longer term solutions and doing modular homes. And so I think with manufactured homes, there's an option for that to have minor impacts to the site plan. So we'll kind of use this as temporary housing and figure out impacts to the site plan process that we're going through with Architectural Squared, or we can divert from apartments and our current site plan that we have and figure out how to integrate in manufactured or modular homes, excuse me. So In looking through our contract with Architectural Squared, the point
Can
of,
you go back one slide just to give the council a little more clarification of the definition between manufactured versus modular?
sure. Yeah, so manufactured homes are produced in a factory. They're basically homes that are built on steel skids. And so they're brought in and placed on a foundation, but they're more temporary. Whereas modular are, as they sound, they're similarly prefabricated. They're made in a factory and they're brought in and they're set on permanent foundations. They're bolted in. I was talking to Barry about this a little bit earlier today, and he said, in terms of maintenance, they're pretty similar. Modular homes are much harder to take apart and relocate somewhere else, whereas manufactured homes are made so that they can be moved a little bit easier because they're on the steel skids. Do you have anything to add to that?
Nope.
Okay. Just making it clear with the RF or the invitation for bids, we are still requiring, we're not looking at park models. We are still looking at housing that is built to HUD standards and built to international residential codes. So they're not going to be mobile homes. They'll either be manufactured homes or modular, kind of depending on how we decide to move forward. So just looking at our
Affixed in that definition, they would, whatever you purchase would be permanent to the park, the area.
I missed the first part of what you said.
So if regardless if it was manufactured or modular, placing them on a permanent foundation in the park would mean that they wouldn't move from the area. They wouldn't be able to be relocated again.
If you place something on a permanent foundation, is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, and if you do, then
yeah, I don't know that that's the plan.
Okay.
Because we plan on moving them. So HUD plated, built to current building standards, not on permanent foundation is kind of the key language we're going to be looking for.
So I guess just a couple of things with that. The resale value of that product would be very low.
Yep.
And we have to check and see if it is even insurable or a product that could actually be relocated per, even the HUD standards. So just putting that.
We can insure them. That's a non-issue. The loss in values is
an insurance company will typically not insure a home that's moved.
We can insure them through the trust for sure. We have ones down there that are movable now that we're insuring. And then the loss of value is a concern, but we're balancing that against to make some of what's down there habitable. It'll be quite expensive, and then we have to tear it down because we can't move those because they're not HUD approved. So you're losing money either way. And we're not saying we're doing this. This is just what we're trying to gather information to try and figure out what's our next best step to provide housing in a gap fill situation, essentially.
Caitlin, a question for you, if I may.
Sure. Let me get through these because I saw that Karen also has a question. Let me just touch really briefly. I think that this kind of process that we're going through right now is separate from the work that we're doing with Architectural Squared. I've kept Courtney and her team informed of this. But I also would think that if we decided to go this route, this still falls into our contract with them. I think that if we wanted to, we could do some minor negotiations, but our contract with them is for project management and pre-development. So that's developing a master plan, and whether that includes apartments or manufactured homes or modular homes or kind of whatever we decide to put on the site. I think that that still is in our contract with them. And I have another slide that like more pretty overwhelming, but it has the breakdown of the set engineering, DHM, landscape design, and architectural squared, what their scope of work is supposed to be. So that's, I think that Lori and I could do a deeper dive into that, but I think the long and the short of it is this is not out of scope if we decided to zigzag into a different direction. And just kind of wanted to end on key takeaways, but I can take questions. But I think the moral of the story is, this is going to be really expensive. This is going to take a financial investment to whether we spend a lot of money to rewire existing trailers with safe electrical systems, just even to make them habitable before the winter. And then we spend a bunch of money to demo them and to replace them in a couple of years with stick-built housing, or whether we buy units right now and we lose value on them moving forward. But I think that we as staff have gotten to a place where we're worried about the people that live out there, and we want to make sure that they are living in safe housing. And I think that we need to pick a direction and keep moving forward with it. So yeah.
So Caitlin, is a hybrid approach even feasible? I don't know how bad a shape all the trailers are in. In other words, I'm wondering if there's a handful of trailers that you could get by with. I mean, do some relatively minor repairs and make them work for the next 2 or 3 years, and others where clearly it makes sense to ditch them and replace them with manufactured housing. Is that making sense?
Hey, Caitlin, let's go ahead and unshare your screen so we can be.
Sure. Sorry, thank you.
No worries.
Yes, Mike, that's something that we have been talking about. And so I think that, with either, current staff, whether it's Kelly and Barry and myself and others that go out and do inventory of existing trailers and kind of figure out which ones need to be fixed and which ones don't. I think that that's definitely a part of it, because I think some of them are definitely in better condition and just need a few minor changes.
And that's a part of what we hope to learn. That's a part of what we hope to learn through the RFP process, as well as what our costs are, what we are able to do with what we currently have. So I think that's part of why we're going forward with the RFP, Mike, is to try and get more information to make the determination as to how much we have to make this work and how much of a hybrid it has to be.
Okay, so one more question, then I'll turn the floor over to Tani. Second, it seems to me there's a separate question you're talking about. Maybe I've got this wrong, and forgive me if I have, but so far we've been talking about apartments and condos, market rate homes versus affordable units. And now all of a sudden you're talking about throwing out part of your master plan and just basically replacing for the affordable housing component of it, just replacing them with basically new trailers. If I got that wrong?
Yes. What we're trying to shoot for right now is a gap fill. There's potentially a 2 to 3 year window before we can move tenants from where they currently live into what we've been showing you, what we're trying to do long term. Some of these trailers are not going to they're not habitable. And habitable is not a question of my opinion versus what someone else is willing to live in or what you're willing to live in. Habitability is a legal standard of certain things that are required to be in a home in order for it to legally be habitable. And some of them don't meet that standard. And so the question then becomes, do we make these a legally habitable trailer under the code and put $15,000 into this trailer to do it, that is not HUD stamped, that we know we cannot move, that we will tear down in 2.5 years? Or do we spend $30,000 and make it a new item for 3 years that we then sell to someone else once we get the the actual project completed, to make it an ADU unit for someone else, which will take an ADU rewrite in our code to get to that point. But we have the ability to try and do that. Like, that's not craziness. We've talked about rewriting our ADU code since the day I got here. If it wasn't for COVID and other things that have happened, we would have done that by now.
Okay.
It's a gap fill more than anything is what we're shooting for right now.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that. Thank you.
Tony.
Yeah, I couldn't hear you. First, how many of the trailers over there are actually occupied? And are there folks over there that qualify to move to the MAPS housing project if they so chose?
Yeah, so
how many are we looking at?
27 occupied right now. And 8 of those are privately owned. So that's one thing that's like an additional part of this that we'll need to figure out in the next few months. But so we have 27. We do have some people that would qualify for MAPS, and I've been talking to some people from MEMC about contacting them to help them fill out applications. So I do think that that's an option. That, yeah, and I've reached out to Jasmine and talked to her about it as well.
Okay, so we're not, I think when we started this, we were like at 35 or 38 or something like that. And so we've gotten rid of some of the worst ones.
Well,
how many are not habitable?
2 burned down, if you recall. So we bought 35, 2 burned down. That took us down to 33. And we basically had 5 over the last year 6 that people have moved out of that legally we could not move someone back into. We've had other ones people move out of. We've moved other tenants in, got new leases, because we're trying to keep that level of housing up. But we've had 5 that people have moved out of that we just went, if we move someone into this and they file a complaint, we can't justify renting this.
Caitlin, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we had 6 removed, and that's now, and we have 2 that we worked through the legal issues of to determine that they are abandoned. And so those 2 we will work to have removed at some point as well, I believe.
That's the other problem we have is when we got these trailers, a lot of them don't have leases with who we don't even know who legally is living in the trailer. So we've had a couple individuals who abandoned the trailers. We had to figure out who they were, if we could move back in. We had another individual who involuntarily got relocated, got told he was going to live somewhere else. And that was his trailer on our property. And he's for 1 to 15 years going to live somewhere else. And so we've had to figure out how we deal with that trailer that's not ours. It's full of this person's property. They're not coming back. Walnut Lane is a fun project. I'll just say that.
Okay, thanks.
Ronnie.
I apologize for freezing so much. So I'll see if I can get this in before I freeze again. And if you guys already discussed this while I was frozen. Caitlin, I sent you an email just with some questions because I got an email from a realtor, just so the rest of you guys know, just saying, they were concerned because we had some discussion about park models, and I don't know if they were, I hear you, Caitlin, saying we aren't going to use them, but I had some discussion where it sounded like we might use them. So part of their note was just a heads up, manufactured homes cannot be moved twice and be able to be financed. Selling them for us elsewhere is problematic. So I think that's some of the questions you were asking, Mayor, but I guess I would just like some of that settled. And then, I am not wedded to anything in particular, but can someone just settle the question for me? Because I get confused by the terminology. Is the park model something we're considering? And I know there are different versions of them. Yeah.
We are not considering park models because they are not built to the IRC. They're not built. Some of them are built to HUD standard, but we're looking for a higher caliber of housing units, I guess you could say. So yeah, I think that the financing thing is something that we'll need to figure out. As far as I know, I think that we would be able to resell them. I mean, I think
We're not looking to finance this process of this project.
right.
We have a lot of money that would pay for what we're attempting to do currently.
Yeah, I don't know. Part of the question was like, if it, if we tried to resell it with the next buyer or be trying to finance it or whatever, maybe that was it.
I don't see us financing at the value and the rate we're buying them with the level of depreciation. I don't see them being financed.
Is it worth it to us to consider a temporary rezone to allow for RVs?
It's already zoned. I mean, it's zoned to allow mobile home park.
You can do an RV park in R4.
You can do a mobile home park.
Right, but I'm talking about RVs.
I don't know that. Let us get through the RFP and see what numbers we get back, and we may need to, Mayor, and that may be something we need to consider.
Because an RV park, if we were to do a temporary, and I don't know what it means to do a temporary zone, but a couple things about RVs: they have wheels, they move definitely. There are titles attached to them, and they do retain resale value. So if the intention is to roll off the site what rolls onto it, that could be a workaround. And that could be a way to, at least, provide that immediate temporary housing. And I know that, in terms of certain models, Airstreams in particular, retain value. I want to throw out another option for consideration as well, since it sounds to me like we're really trying to find workable solutions, because we really do need to make sure that we have decent and safe housing for our residents for the winter. So I was lucky to watch, I guess, and be familiar with. I'm lucky to be familiar with the Sorensen Center's. They did a housing innovation project grant last year, and they actually chose modular construction. They prioritized modular construction, and so there were a handful of nationwide companies that submitted projects, and I got to meet several of them. And this is housing that's built off site and brought to site and goes pretty quick. And there are regional manufacturing plants building those units right now. And it would take a total shift between, our square doing just the site layout and making sure that we're forming to code. But we could also, if we're going to be doing a request, tell me again what we're putting out, hopefully next Thursday.
An invitation for bids.
An invitation for bids. So what we could include in the invitation for bids is, a section B of, we'd also consider bids that would place units on the ground by end of November, because I think we could limp along to end of November. And specifically in the area that can receive the units because trailers have been removed. So first phase, so the southeastern corner, like we've been talking about as the potential first phase anyway. So the units that are just really to the point where putting money into them is not worth it. Fixing a window or two. I just got some feedback. I'm not sure why. Probably because it's 9:21. So is that something that you think we could include in the request that we publish?
Yeah, so Summer, can I get a clarification on whether that's being posted this week or next week?
Just on your request and the direction that I was given, it was coming out this week.
Okay. Yeah, so we sent a public notice to the newspaper, so we still have time tomorrow to update it. So if we want to meet a little bit more to talk about the specific, the specifications to include with that, we can kind of expand to include some of that information.
I think if we're throwing a net and you have the capacity to do that, I'd be happy to meet tomorrow morning and we could kind of craft the language for that.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
And then back to the other kind of Hail Mary of zoning, this sort of temporary zoning as an RV park. Is that just, Joel, Carly, is that outrageous? Is there such a thing as a temporary zone?
You would just rezone and then zone back.
I don't think there's a temporary zone.
You just rezone one and then zone back to the other if you wanted to change the zone back.
Could we create a special zone for that particular lot?
You could create a zone for that lot, or you could just amend the zone that it's in to allow for that use. You could potentially do a PUD to create a different project, and then that way you're not changing zones. Like, there's a couple of different land use tools you could use to get around that. Rezoning and then zoning back is probably not the best step, but if we were wanting to do something like that, there's some things we could do to make that work.
Because each existing trailer slot should have hookups that include sewer, water, electric, right?
Yes.
So if we were to pull or demolish on site because it's not even a pullable unit and move in an RV that is likely even the same square footage, that would be an absolute immediate housing replacement option with a title and a resale value for consideration, but the zone is not the right zone.
Right. Yeah, so that's, while we're waiting for bids to come back for like one of those other avenues, we can work as a planning department to see kind of what that other avenue would look like, because that would be kind of separate from this invitation for bids, I think.
Yeah, that would be like another branch of opportunity to investigate.
Right. Yeah.
I appreciate staff really working hard to make sure our residents are safe and that they have decent housing, which includes water and electricity. And it's been a very hot summer. And I appreciate the work that Kelly has done to maintain the units.
Kelly Oliver and Bonnie Stocks are down there about every day, if not every day, and some days all day.
And we knew that buying this was going to open our eyes and our doors to what's happening. And so
some days they come back to the office and they're just completely dejected from what they've seen and what they've been asked to fix. And they're like, this is ridiculous. And we agree. And we got to do some more. We got to do something about it. So.
Okay, so anything else, Caitlin, for your presentation? Oh, Karen?
So I'm just curious how much money is in the funds to have this discussion.
Clint, you sat here for 3 hours just for that question.
Yeah.
How much money is in the Wahoo account?
We got 1.6 in the Wahoo account, and I can send you all a Excel file of what we have in all of our accounts at the moment.
Did we earmark that 1.6 for a more narrow focus of spending, or are we have flexibility with the funds?
Yeah, we can do that. We have been through that several times. We check it repeatedly as we change course on this project. We have the ability to provide this level of housing as employee housing is what it boils down to.
I was also going to ask, sorry, Karen, I'm totally stepping over your questions. But
that's fine. I was just curious. I mean, it seems to me if I was trying to do this and where the city isn't hemorrhaging money, and this is also a very difficult discussion to have during COVID, obviously, is, okay, what can we do to get a return on doing temporary housing? And Joel, I really love the idea of the ADUs. I mean, that seems, you know, that's something that we could give back to, you know, a potential local homeowner who can also recoup, you know, financial losses through this time by buying one of these units. And if we can button up our ADU code and make it really easy, like we've been talking about, then this is great. And it seems like it would be a good segue. And then we're not, I mean, because I have no idea. I mean, you guys aren't going to know what comes out of this. I mean, are there prefabricated units that are inexpensive, or, I mean, RVs, like there's liability to that is, and do we want more RVs in the community? I mean, not ideally, you know, another.
The goal, Karen, would be, if that's the way we're going, the goal in that scenario would be to get a modular that meets the International Building Code, that someone can live in long-term, change the ADU code, get those back into the community and have them be long-term rentals. So we would not only provide, when we're all said and done, 60 to 80 units at Walnut Lane, but 30 other units throughout the community as well through what we're trying to do right now. That would be best case scenario for what we're talking about.
And then the other thing that makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up is the ones that are, the units that are owned. I mean, are we buying those from like how?
They have no value. We're more than likely going to negotiate a trade on term of leases than an economic trade for the actual trailer. So we don't want to own the trailer. We just want to be able to tear it down. So more than anything, it'd be more of a contractual where they get so much credit towards rent in the new facility, and they agree that their trailer can be torn down, and we never take possession of the trailer. We don't have to do title, we don't have to do change, we don't have to figure out who actually. The easiest way to do it would be something like that.
And again, I'm sorry, how many of those were privately owned? 5?
8.
Oh, 8. Okay. Okay, that was it for me.
If I could make one point about the funding for this is for the affordable housing, we, in our ordinance, if someone's building previously overnight accommodations, they could either build affordable housing or they could contribute a fee in lieu. And that is the money that is the 1.6 that they were referring to. It is earmarked only for affordable housing. So the distinction is, if anybody thinks this is coming out of the general fund money, it is not. So, you know, we realize that the city went through substantial cuts because of COVID. This is a separate fund, and it can be used for construction, maintenance, and provision of affordable housing. So Joel's right. We've gone through this a couple of times to see, you know, can we do this with the affordable housing funds? But these are funds that are earmarked for affordable housing, and they couldn't be used for other purposes.
And by earmarked, we don't mean we put them in an account, therefore that's what they say. They were collected under the pretext that this is all they could be used for. Our option is to use them for this or give them back to the developer that paid them. They cannot be used for anything else.
Right, by our code, that is exactly the situation.
I've got one more question about money regarding the loan that we currently have with Science Bank. Can we talk about the terms of that loan? So
I'm sure you get asked questions about terms of that loan now. I don't know if I have them memorized.
Well, so it was for the purchase price, but I feel like there was potentially, it was like a balloon payment. So it was like a 2-year in balloon or something like that. I don't know.
I don't know that, Mayor. The finance director and the city manager who oversaw that purchase are no longer here. I'd have to review to see if that's the case.
So let's review that to make sure that the call in that note isn't a looming issue.
The current finance director will get back to you on that immediately.
So, Emily, the documentation that I have for the bond, and I don't know, I mean, says it's from, the loan officer, but it looks like it's a 20-year bond. 3.6% until 2028, and then it drops down to 3.14% until 2038.
From what I had looked at previously, I hadn't seen a balloon payment, but I will look back and I'll send the documents over so you guys can see them.
And then are we making monthly payments out on that note out of the housing fund?
Yes, I think we are.
Uh,
I'll check on that all, but I'll sit with Summer tomorrow and we'll take a look.
Now let us get back to that. I don't think it's a monthly.
Is it not?
Okay.
No, I'm pretty sure it's not, but I think it's a lump.
So with
Okay.
the interest being at zero, is there any possibility of refinancing, or are we stuck?
We'll be talking to Zion's Bank tomorrow, so
That's the
we can
meeting
bring it
we'll have.
up and have that discussion. We got a meeting with Alex, so we can add that to the agenda.
Thank you, staff, for being awesome. And to be continued. Thank you, Caitlin, for sticking through to the end of the meeting as well. And Clint, and Lori, and Carly, and Joel. If there's no further discussion on this item, we can move on to the approval of the bills against the city of Moab. Is there a motion?
I move to approve the bills against the city of Moab in the amount of $72,735.43.
Thank you, Tony. Second?
I'll second.
Discussion?
I don't have any of the highlights in front of me.
No worries. It's 9:34 anyway.
Highlights at 9:30.
No highlights. Okay. 1 second. Roll call vote. Tawny?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Kaylin?
Aye.
Karen?
Aye.
Ronnie?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. And is there a motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A
I will.
second.
Thank you. Ronnie? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously and we are adjourned. Thank you all for joining tonight.
Thank all you guys. All
Thank
of
you. Good night.
Good night.